The Anaheim Ducks have finally fired head coach Randy Carlyle. Plus, we also have a small trade from yesterday between the Montreal Canadiens and the Philadelphia Flyers that I want to cover as well. We'll get into all that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. Off the top, I want to kick things off here with a small NHL trade that took place yesterday between the Montreal Canadiens and the Philadelphia Flyers. The Montreal Canadiens have acquired forward Dale Weise along with defenseman Christian Folin in exchange for defenseman David Schlemko and forward Byron Froese. Of course, most of you likely recall that Dale Weise formerly played for the Montreal Canadiens, and during his NHL career, that's probably where he played his best hockey. He had a couple of really solid seasons in Montreal, and of course ended up getting traded, and then later signed in Philadelphia. And of course, as of late, things haven't really been working out. The Flyers had a very poor start to their season. Things weren't going well, and with the change in general manager and such, there have been a few changes, and Dale Weise has been playing in the American Hockey League. So it's been no secret that Dale Weise is a player that the Flyers wanted to move. Of course, Montreal is likely hoping they can reignite the player and get him back playing the way he used to when he was with them in the past. I don't mind this trade for Montreal. Dale Weise is a forward who they're familiar with, somebody who they feel can come in and hopefully contribute. I know he's likely going to start with the American Hockey League. He hasn't been officially called up here as of yet, but I know that they're also been a little bit frustrated with forward Charles Hudon. They very well might be looking to move him right now. He's a player that's kind of come up before with the Montreal Canadiens. That's been kind of having a hard time finding consistency in his game, and somebody that they wouldn't mind moving out. So we'll see how the Montreal Canadiens decide to proceed here, but I would expect Weise to get an opportunity with the main roster here in the very near future. And of course, in Christian Folin, they get a right shot 28-year-old Swedish defenseman who's got about 200 games of NHL experience under his belt here. He's played in 26 games for the Flyers this year. He's got a decent amount of NHL experience, so he's certainly a serviceable guy. Can play probably in the bottom pair, be like a 5, 6, 7 type defenseman. Now, Dale Weise is making $2.35 million right now for this year and for next season as well. Of course, some of that's buried right now where he's considered an American Hockey League player. And on Christian Folin's deal, he makes $800,000, but the Flyers did retain $150K of that salary, so the cap hit for Montreal is only $650,000. Now, like I said, going out the other way to the Philadelphia Flyers is left shot defenseman David Schlemko. Of course, he's been around the NHL for a fair bit of time. He's got over 400 games of experience. So his name is 31 years old. He's a left shot defenseman. He's been used very sparingly this year for Montreal. He's only gotten into 18 games, so he's basically a spare part for them. He's making $2.1 million for this year and for next as well. Byron Froese is a pending unrestricted free agent. He hasn't played in the NHL this season. He's been playing with the Montreal Canadiens American Hockey League team. He did get into a fair bit of action last year, playing 48 games for the Montreal Canadiens. So, unfortunately, this year he didn't crack their roster at a training camp, and his limited opportunities have seen him down in the American Hockey League. The main reason the Flyers retained salary on Christian Folin was basically to kind of level out the salaries here, so there was an even number of cap hits going either way within this deal, since the Dale Weise contract is a little bit more than the David Schlemko contract going out for Montreal. So all in all here, it's a swap with some minor players. The only possibility I see of having any impact is if Dale Weise can find his game in Montreal like he did in the past. So the cap hit doesn't really change on either side of the equation here. And a minor deal, but something I just wanted to discuss here before we jumped into the next piece of news, which happened just a few hours ago earlier this afternoon, with the Anaheim Ducks finally firing head coach Randy Carlyle. Now, many people have been expecting this news to happen here any time now, really over the last number of weeks. The Anaheim Ducks have been on a massive losing streak. They've dropped 19 of their previous 21 games. And that Western Conference playoff race is kind of weird right now. Those wildcard teams are likely going to have record low point totals. And even with that losing streak that they've been on, they're still only 6 points out of a playoff spot. So hope is not all completely lost with the Anaheim Ducks if they can get things turned around here. But I do think they're going to need a lot of roster adjustments to really have a chance moving forward. Some of you may recall in my season previews, I expressed a lot of concern over the Anaheim Ducks and the way this team is built. I said they were getting a little bit too old, a little too slow. I had a lot of concerns over injury problems and players' bodies breaking down on this team, and we've seen a lot of that this year. And unfortunately, a lot of the concerns I had are showing to be something that they really need to be aware of here, need to make some changes moving forward. Of course, this was Randy Carlyle's second tenure as head coach of the Anaheim Ducks. He was there from 2005 to 2011. Of course, helped bring them their first ever Stanley Cup in franchise history in 2007. Of course, Randy Carlyle coached the Toronto Maple Leafs in between, but then later returned to the Ducks here as head coach in 2016, so it was just shy of 3 years. He was given a 1-year contract extension after last season, so he was in the final year of his deal. There wasn't a whole lot of time left. I think it's pretty much all about a given here that Randy Carlyle wasn't going to be returning next year after the way things have gone this year, but General Manager Bob Murray has decided to make that move now. Then he has named himself as interim head coach for the remainder of this season. Now, Bob Murray's made some comments basically saying that he had a lot of concerns over this team and their lack of effort, lack of pushback, and just wants to really get at the heart of the problems and get into the dressing room and kind of see for himself to get a better idea here what the problems are, to find out what the team needs. He's kind of going old school here, kind of like what we see Lou Lamoriello do in the past. Of course, in the past, we've seen it was more common to have a guy that was a coach and GM at the same time, or GMs come down to the bench after firing a coach to kind of take over for a short period of time before naming a new successor. But it's not something we've seen in a very long time, but it does make a lot of sense, in my opinion, for Bob Murray to do this. It was just announced the other day here that Bob Murray's been given a contract extension himself. So even though the Anaheim Ducks have had a terrible season, ownership still believes in him and the direction he can take this team. But of course, in my opinion, as much as you can say what you want about Randy Carlyle, I'm just personally not a fan of how this team is built, which falls on the general manager. I mean, this team is just not built for today's NHL with the skilled players, with the speed. They just don't have it. They have a few players that meet that description, but just not nearly enough. They're tied to a lot of long-term contracts for guys like Corey Perry, Ryan Getzlaf, Ryan Kessler, and as much as those guys have all had terrific careers, they're just not the prototypical players you need today to be successful, and yet they're tied to these guys for a large number of years and a lot of money still based on their past success. So it's going to be a difficult challenge ahead for Bob Murray here. The most likely thing that we see happen is that their American Hockey League coach, Dallas Eakins, of course has previously coached in the NHL, is likely going to be the successor, but they did not want to take him away from the American Hockey League right now. They're very pleased with what he's been doing with their American Hockey League affiliate in San Diego. He's doing a lot of great work with a lot of their prospects and really helping them develop. They're having a strong season down there, and they'd like to have him in place to finish out the year and go into the playoffs and see what he can do down there. But more than likely, he is named as the next head coach during the offseason, barring something else. I mean, of course, there's going to be other candidates talked to and interviewed, I'm sure. There are some big names out there like Joel Quenneville. I don't really see him as being a candidate for Anaheim, but stranger things have happened, and I'm sure that he won't be the only guy that that's considered here. But Eakins more than likely will be the next head coach. Is just going to be named at a later time, and like I said, it gives Bob Murray a chance to really interact with this roster on a little bit different level, get behind the bench, get to see exactly, from a bird's eye view here, what's going on, so he can kind of get to the heart of the matter and really decide what he needs to do between now and the trade deadline and then during the offseason to really restructure and reshape this team to see what they can do to get things corrected in Anaheim. I mean, really, for a long time, the Ducks have had a pretty solid franchise. They're a team you could always count on to have a really solid season, make the playoffs, be competitive and be a dangerous team and threat to win. And right now, it's just not there. So I think he's got a big challenge ahead of him, and we'll see what he can do. So, of course, as always, I want to hear your thoughts and comments down below. What did you think of that small trade between the Flyers and the Habs? I know it's a minor deal, but do you think any of those players at all can have any impact on either of those teams moving forward? And what do you think Bob Murray needs to do in order to get this Ducks team corrected? And do you think more than likely Dallas Eakins does become the next head coach at the end of the season? If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.